Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. I'm James Baggett, founder of Car Dealer Magazine, and today on the show I'm chatting to Chris Wiseman, Managing Director of Wessex Garages. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, James. Thanks very much for the opportunity. Nice to be speaking to you from my office at work for once and not from home.
Lovely to see you in the office, and thank you for joining us. Chris, I'm going to do a quick introduction for you. So you've been in the motor trade, and I'll whisper it quietly, for 40 odd years, 20 of which have been with Wessex Garages. Wessex has got 7 sites, including Mazda, Kia, Hyundai and Renault brands, among others, and is part of the VT Holdings Group. Now that group owns Wessex, CCR, Mitsubishi and Griffin Mill, all of whom work independently. In 2019, Wessex Garages turned over 151 million, and Chris has been in charge of that. So Chris, firstly, a lot has happened in the motor trade over the last 24, 48 hours, which we'll come on to. But firstly, just tell us a little bit about Wessex Garages for those people who don't know your business.
Yeah, thanks. So Wessex Garages was predominantly a privately owned South Wales regional motor group for many years, established in 1991. Just over 4 years ago, it was sold to VT Holdings, a very large Japanese conglomerate in South Africa. They're in Japan with just over 100 Nissan businesses in Japan. Honda, Toyota, they own Automoción in Spain, a large dealer group out there with Vauxhall. So the business has changed from a private ownership into what is potentially a PLC. The challenge is to keep the ethos of a private company going when you have a different group of shareholders looking after you. So those are the challenges as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
So how many staff have you got, Chris, working across the businesses?
So just under 300, about 296 at the moment. We've had up to 84% of those furloughed during this period. We're down to about 63% of furloughed staff as we've gradually gone in through this reopening process, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But it's always remained around about just around the 300 staff. We've got 4 Kia businesses, 3 Nissan, a couple of Hyundai, we've got Renault, Dacia in there, and Mazda at our head office in Bristol as well.
So which one of those franchises was the best performing up until all this kicked off?
I think Kia for us. I think Kia we've grown with over the last probably 10, 12 years now. As a franchise, they're really easy to deal with. I think any Kia dealer will tell you this. Their campaigns, their communication is simple, they're clear, and their communication is very good. Prior to that, we've been historically a very strong player with Nissan. Nissan's had a tough few years, obviously, with their market share declining. That's on the turn, I'm glad to say. So we have 2 really strong partners there. Hyundai, good brand for us as well, sticking with the Korean theme. And then we've got a couple of the smaller brands off the back of that with Mitsubishi, which we're just over 2 years into. And then Renault Dacia, of course, is one that we've come back to with Renault a few years ago, and we've come back to those. But yeah, predominantly the Kia brands remain the most consistent.
They've certainly got some fantastic products in the Kia range that are popular across a broad cross-section of customers. What about that news recently from Nissan that there was possible retrenching from Europe? I don't know whether you picked up on that, but there's supposedly an announcement on May the 27th that could mean that they're going to pull back from Europe. Have you heard anything about that, or what are your thoughts there?
I had no communication other than what I picked up on the press as well, and I think these times tend to give a lot of industry speculation and chatter, don't they? And I think until you hear it from the horse's mouth, it's really difficult to comment. They've rationalised their range. That's true. Manufacturing looks like it's going to start up again, certainly in the UK. So again, that's good news for us. And they're on the up. So whilst Central Europe may be having a bit of a problem, I think prior to this, the UK, it looked like it was on the turn, and we had quite an optimistic view of Nissan.
What about yourself, Chris? How did you get into the trade?
A long time ago. Yeah. So when I was at school, I was 14. I went as a job as a car cleaner, as a valeter, and progressed through a sales track. Went from a salesman in a used car pitch, specialist used cars, into main franchise operations sales. Salesman, business manager, sales manager, a general manager, and then got taken in a business that got taken over by Evans Howshaw, pre the current setup of Evans Howshaw, and then worked through various general management positions, including a bit of volume. So 20 years ago, just over, joined what was the old Wessex garages in a slightly different capacity, working on more strategic marketing, operational roles then, and then got back into the nitty gritty of after sales director, ops director, and then in November of last year took over as managing director. So just at the right time.
So yeah, slight baptism of fire to that position then. So day to day, Chris, up until this all kicks off, what would keep you busy?
We've got quite a diverse business in terms of I have a good operations team around me, which will take care of sales and after sales. But certainly our ethos has always been hands-on. We're very active in web, internet, marketing. We've always tried to be really creative in that. And the role's changed for me as I've moved into this role. It's become, I guess, even more strategic, thinking of what the next step is. And to me, this lockdown has been a great opportunity to sit, as it has quite a lot of people, to be honest, to sit and reflect and think what the business looks like as you come out the other side. And I think there's quite exciting changes ahead for us. And I have to say that because you've got to be optimistic when you sit in this chair.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly going to have to be some changes to the industry, which we will come on to. There's been a lot of information though that's come out in the last 24 to 48 hours, Chris. I really like your take on it. I mean, firstly, do you think they're going to be open on June the 1st, or do you think that's still up for negotiation?
I think if he opens retail, if he opens any sort of retail, then I think there's a good shout that we are in the first phase. And I say that on the back of what I hope and what I hear from the industry and FDA, SMMT lobbying the government. In general, we have a far better ability to social distance than a lot of people. I don't think any manufacturers will be pushing us on standards and the number of cars we need to have in our showroom during this period. I think it would be foolhardy if they did. So that allows us to create good zones of social distancing. So on that basis, I think if retail is ready to open, so if the 5 tests or this new 1 to 5 scale that he's introduced drops far enough, then I don't see why we wouldn't be open on June the 1st in some capacity. The shape of that business looks totally different depending on how ready you are and the preparation that you put in and how you communicate that to your customers. Certainly, there's a lot of prior to Sunday's notification from Boris. Certainly, there was a lot of news coming down from certain manufacturers that we were gearing up to potentially the 11th, maybe the 18th, but there seemed to be that upward trend that it was going to get back onto some sort of trading. But the business will need to change, and that needs to be a stepped back into business.
You've certainly been on the front foot, Chris, when it comes to putting in place these preparations for reopening. I mean, I follow you on LinkedIn, and I've seen a lot of your posts, and we've covered them on Car Dealer magazine. What made you take those steps so early to prepare for this reopening? I mean, what went through your head when it came to putting that together?
I think the opportunity, as I said before, of being able to reflect on the business while we've been effectively working from home means that once you've dealt with the initial phase of closing down the business, which was quite tough, a business that's been operating for 30 years, to close that in 24 hours was no mean feat. But to do that safely, professionally, and communicate that in the right way, I think I was delighted we were able to do that. And I think the industry as a whole reacted very well to that. But there came a time in that period where you start to think of what life looks after that, and you take a look at the legislation, you get your head around the health and safety implications of that, and what it would take to open a business safely. And I've taken a bit of advice, not only from industry professionals, but from people outside of our industry, from people within the NHS that work in COVID wards. And the transition to get back was all about what's safe, what's professional, and what does it look like to a customer. When you start putting your head around that, you start to think of what PPE you need, what signage you need, and what measures you need to put in place. They're by no means comprehensive, but they're probably over the top. I'd say, rather than they're not subtle, my signage, and I don't think it should be. We looked at, and we were already well ahead of what we needed to do with screens and signage. We were trying to gear up for a day, and knowing that we could always operate within after sales, a day where we could function outside of looking after key workers. So during the period, we've had skeleton staff in ad hoc dealing with key workers, warranty work and immediate service work. But you could see that there was going to become even 7 weeks of pent-up demand of service and MOT, warranty work, recall work. So it was going to have to, we were going to have to get back to some sense of normality. So it's just a kind of an early prep thought that I had, and then setting a timescale. The worst thing I could think of doing was not putting a timescale in. I'd rather have been ready to go on Monday morning, as we were, than and have to delay that by 2 weeks, or not be ready, than somebody make an announcement and then me to be scratching around for PPE or signage. So it was important, and it was important that we made the dealerships look different. It was important that when a customer comes in, or our colleagues and our managers, they see and feel a completely different environment, and that was the key to it for me.
So, Chris, talk me through some of those specific things that you've actually put in place. I mean, I noticed that you've put some very high-vis walkways into some dealerships. What else have you done?
Yeah, so we going back to the visual aspect, we making it look different. A lot of the manufacturers have been really supportive to the network through this whole process, as you've talked about before, and they've put in place some point of sale. The problem is it all looks a bit corporate to me, and I don't think that looks different enough for when a customer comes into the business. So aside from creating clear 2 meter distancing in all the showrooms with dedicated doors in and doors out, and the signage which includes notifying people that we're closed for sales. We are not open for sales, that the cars are locked and nobody can talk to you about cars. It was important. In terms of PPE, we've got screens up on all the desks, hand sanitizer, wipes are everywhere in the business. Face masks, I think, are due to arrive this week, although that's another discussion on where they fit into the process. We have a normal level of what I would call sanitization of cars with our valeters, and we've written a process for that. And then we have an additional level of sanitization with the ozone machines, which at the minute we are conducting on all service cars when they come through. So it's that level of reassurance that we're trying to give customers as they come in. They can see it, they can feel the difference. Obviously, there's less staff in the business as well, so they feel more comfortable. So we stopped using tea and coffee machines for the time being. We put in separate policies for the use of restrooms, and hot food is currently banned in the businesses. So lots of change, lots for our staff to get their head around. But we were keen to issue a really clear set of instructions for when they come back to work. The danger is, and it's always been the danger, is we can create an environment. I can create an idea, an environment, and to be fair, I was the one sticking a lot of the stickers on the floors and on the windows, because I wanted it to look and feel how I wanted it to look at. We create an environment. The danger is that customers don't see us adhering to that. So when we start filling this business up with more and more of our colleagues coming back to work, the danger is that if we don't do what we say we're doing, the point of sale is a waste of time.
Did you struggle with any of those things or when you were putting them in place to get hold of them? Like, for example, the Perspex screens or sanitisation goods. I mean, if a dealer was planning what you've already done now, what would you say to go out there and get quickly?
Well, hand sanitizer was always a big one. We ordered that. We ordered it pre-lockdown, and we picked it up, I think, or it was delivered a week ago. So that was a tough one for us, getting that in bulk. I think we bought out most of the shops for black and yellow sticky tape. We used suppliers that we know to do printing, and I think that's important. We use companies that we've used before. We support them to do our own printing, and we, to be honest, we were quite pushy on when we wanted the timelines to be met, and I think that was important as well. So getting valeters back to work was another one. We use a local valeting firm. We've had a long-term relationship with those, but those guys were self-employed and they scattered to the four winds. So making sure that you give your valeting companies or some of the people that were self-employed that are doing other jobs now enough notice to be able to bring those people back into the business. It's careful planning. It's nothing more than careful planning, and I don't think you can do that early enough.
I love the video you created as well. We published that on the website and shouted about the fact of it as a great example of getting across the message to customers. Why did you think it was so important to produce that?
We've always had a bit of a history of doing little videos. We have some great people working in our organisation that do videos, and very creative people. But it's about consumer confidence. You know, the whole, shouldn't mention the Brexit word because it's a different time. But you know, that having to restore people's confidence through the Brexit period, and this is that plus. This is about the look, the feel that customers can trust coming into the business. And I was talking to customers yesterday that were waiting in our showrooms or in the reception areas about how they felt, and delighted by the feedback. And we've raised that now to doing a little online survey for when they come in. So is there anything we could do better? But you know, the response that we were getting back were comments. You know, I feel safer in here than I do in the supermarket. You know, and that's about communication, isn't it? That's about telling customers what we're doing, showing them what we're doing, showing them all about the cars when they come in. We have protective seat covers and steering wheel covers and floor mats and gear stick covers, and we're taking those off so that the customer's got a clean car when they finish with it. So you can't. I don't think you can go over the top on it. Is my view. I think you have to. It becomes almost a new norm. That's how we're going to transact.
What about changes to your back office? I mean, when June the 1st comes around and you're allowed to reopen again, fingers crossed, are you going to bring everybody back in your business, even in the back office?
That'd be crazy. Yeah, the social distancing is working currently, and it's working because we don't have 300 people in the business. To bring everybody back en masse would be a bit foolhardy, I think. At the minute, we're stress testing. We're stress testing what these processes look like. There will be people that need to come back earlier. There will be, you know, we have administrators, we have central admin. At the minute, we're not selling any cars. We don't need those people in the business at the moment. We have, you know, the required number of admin people around us if we need to. So until we know what the volume of cars look like, then and the sales rates look like, then we'll start stepping administrators back in, marketing people as well. And my operations team have remained unfurloughed through this. So one of each of my department heads and the general managers and service managers have all remained unfurloughed. But it's all about judging what the market looks like moving forward. There will be working from home. There will be more flexibility. There will be a need for that based upon things like schools. So I could be asking all my staff to come back, but I don't have childcare issues, but a lot of those colleagues do. So we have to consider all of those factors as well. And I think coming out the back of this, people will, I've heard it said before, will judge on, how have you acted as an employer? How have you behaved as a company, both to colleagues and customers? And I think we can put our hands up and say, yeah, we're doing this the right way, and we're not taking risks.
I wish the same could be said for the rest of the motor trade. I've heard some shocking stories, but we won't go into those. On the furlough side of things, though, Chris, we're expecting an announcement from the Chancellor probably in the next 40 minutes or hour or so on what happens to the furlough scheme. What would you like to hear from him, and how would you like to see that furlough scheme phased out?
Well, definitely not a cliff edge. That would be a disaster for not just us, but for industry in general. We can't bring people back into the business en masse if we don't have a customer base to support that. So a gradual stepping away from that would be good. There is talk about obviously a 60% threshold being brought in at the end of June. Part-time working as an option, which I think would be really useful for us. And if that's extended through to September, I think that would be ideal. I think by the time we get into that September market, we should have a better idea of what this industry looks like. I think after sales will come back quite quickly. I think car sales will come back quite quickly, but then we'll suffer potential shortages in new cars as well. So we may have that to deal with. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which way you look at it, this industry is going to be so determined by what happens in social distancing. So we can set whatever deadlines, or Boris Johnson can, but if people don't maintain this level of social distancing, then and we get a second spike, then anything we discuss today is out the window. The one thing I've said, the only thing I know about all of this, we shut the business on the 24th, and that's it. Anything else is speculation and viewpoints.
I know during that period of time that you have been open in some respects for servicing. I understand that you had a bit of a shocking visitor the other day that taught you a lesson that other dealers would certainly like to hear. I was wondering whether you could tell us that story.
Yes, it was our Cardiff branch. The general manager and one of my fleet guys were in, because through this period we've been delivering cars to end users for fleet, which is a lot simpler and a lot less onerous than it is to do a retail handover or delivery. They were in the business prepping it, so they were in doing what I was doing, putting lines on the floors and making sure that the cars that we needed to prep, because used cars hadn't moved for 7 weeks, so every one of our used cars is going through some sort of initial prep to make sure that they're still okay for test drives when we do reopen. And a guy walks in and walks up to the fleet guy and says, who do I speak to about buying a car? And fortunately that he turned around and said, well, we're not open for sales. If you want to talk about our cars or look at information, it's all available online. We can transact end to end online, but we can't discuss it in the showroom. Other couple of bits of more conversation took place, at which point he said, yeah, I'm from Trading Standards and I'm mystery shopping all the dealers. You shouldn't have your front door open, you shouldn't have your gates open, you look like you're open for sales. And we hadn't got all the signage up, but it was fairly clear what we were doing. But yeah, a lesson which I shared it with Simon Boker from Simco as I was doing a walk and he was doing a walk. We were chatting, and he said, "Can I put that message out there?" And I said, "Absolutely, yeah, absolutely."
That's certainly something that could catch a lot of dealers out, or something they're going to need to be careful of. When this all kicked off, Chris, what went through your head?
It happened a week earlier than I thought it might happen. That was the first one. It came earlier than I thought. We were prepping certainly the last sort of 10 days before of what might happen, speculating what might happen and when it might happen, and I felt it was going to happen a week later than it did. The close down was I say dramatic. I mean, we had staff who the following day didn't know whether they should come into work, whether we'd be open. We have about 204 cars still to deliver from March, which is another problem we've got to deal with. We've got cars all over our after sales departments, and we had about a week, 5 days to properly close the business down in terms of ongoing work and what we could deliver in that period of time. After which it was shut, and I didn't visit the business then for 2 or 3 weeks really, and actually quite soul destroying walking around some of our businesses, seeing forecourts emptied because we secured cars and businesses shut down. Yeah, and I think that was really the sort of the catalyst for me, going back to what we said earlier about the turning point of what it looks like going forward, walking back onto the sites and seeing them in that state really. Hats off to our general managers who made sure the sites were secured daily and were in washing cars and keeping bird lime off cars. But the actual close down itself, when you start looking at the cash flow implications, I sat with my FD and we looked at how much cash we might burn in that period of time, which was horrendous. What support we could get from the government, because at that point was very unclear and remained quite unclear for some time, I have to say. Yeah, quite a worrying time. The only thing I always kind of hang my hat on really is, as you said earlier, 40 years in the motor trade. We are resilient. We've had this before. We are in a less fortunate position than many other industries because of our margins and because of our return on investment has always been tight, and we've always managed to come back from it. And I think that's the bit that's the bit you've got to hang your hat on and say, yeah, this is, we've got through it before. This time we're in it with the manufacturers, probably even more so. This time it's global. So yeah, I think we'll come back strong.
A question on this topic has come in from YouTube about the VT holdings and how I think that their point is the dealers that they own in Japan have been open during this time. Have they been supportive of UK dealers being shut? Yeah,
they have. The great thing about the parent company is we report to them weekly, obviously. We give them the feedback. I've got a Japanese chap that works for me who's a direct contact into VT, Tommy, and their view is we know the market, i.e. Wessex garages know the market. We know what's going on. We report to them, we tell them what's going on, and we tell them our decisions. They don't impose decision-making process on us. They obviously have policies which we adhere to, but as far as making those decisions, effectively we're on the ground, we get to make it. Whilst we're independent, I obviously talk to the managing directors of the other two businesses, and we try and at least have some sort of cohesive plan on what we're doing to reopen, and that's been working quite well as well.
Have you managed to make any car sales during this time, and what's your online solution look like?
We've taken probably now just over 300 inquiries online through the web platform, of which we have 18 online deposits, which isn't particularly high. We've had no real massive focus other than continually talking to those customers in terms of trying to deliver cars to them or sell them over and above a deposit. We've sold and delivered 2 cars to NHS workers, 2 nurses independently that needed cars. We transacted the whole of that online. All of the payments were done online, and we delivered out to their respective houses in a safe manner. That said, we're not geared up for that. I can do that for 2 people, but I can't do it for the 200 customers that I've got waiting for their cars at the minute or moving forward. And I think that's where the model changes. The online platform and the way that we handle online inquiries is going to change. It's one of the things I'm working on now as to what that might look like when we come back.
So do you think that is going to rapidly change your business or drastically change your business going forward?
I think it will make us better. I think it will make us sharper and more acutely aware of the online customer. So we've tried, like probably most businesses have been in the past, to turn online customers into a showroom visit, quite quickly and deal with them in the showroom. I think our understanding is changing on that. I think we now understand that customer, as one of 3-4 ways that customer can now transact, and that could go from, yes, he wants to visit the showroom, or he wants to deal and transact totally online. I've been trying to push for a year something we've called demo to your door, and saying so the customer that's halfway between the showroom visit or the total online has that opportunity to say, well, I want to transact a bit online, but I quite like to see him and drive the car. And the take-up's been quite poor on that. And I'm trying to get my head around why that was historically, because it made sense to me, and somebody independently pointed out, isn't that like a double glazing salesman coming around and sitting in your front room, and isn't that what the customers think? Which is a bit of an eye-opener, but no, nevertheless valid feedback. We did a straw poll. We put a little survey out, which we've been doing to our customers to see what the mood is. 70% of our customer base that we surveyed now say they want to have a demo done at their house, not in business, and that's a massive shift. So I mean, that's a great indicator of where we could be going. But yeah, I think there'll be a different way of transacting in the future. Yeah.
What about help from the government going forward, Chris? What would you like to see if it came to a stimulus package for this industry? Would that look like a VAT cut or a scrappage scheme? What would you like to see?
Well, scrappage was fantastic. It was fantastic for us because we had those brands, the Korean brands in particular, that were just seized hold of that, and that was fantastic for us as a period in time to kickstart it. I think the problem is that the word scrappage has been booted around in every campaign from every manufacturer since that point in time when they want a message to hang their hat on. So I think you've got to be careful of what something like scrappage looks like moving forward. I think manufacturers will put their own stimulus packages in as far as trying to transact the products that they've got available to make sure that they sell what they've got in the country currently. So I think that will focus their mind a little bit. From a government, it would be lovely to see a VAT cut. I'm not sure that they can afford to do that. I'm no economist, but I think part of this whole reason to get people back into work is as much about them paying tax and NI and putting some money back into the government as anything else. I think the government support has been great so far. The furlough scheme has been superb. Once it went live, for us, it's a significant amount of money, but we're nowhere near the biggest group in the country, or take every other industry. And to have that money paid in within 7 days into your bank account for cash flow has meant that our borrowings have been significantly reduced. The rates, business rates, again, we've been shouting for that in the industry for a long time. That needed to be done, and moving forward, I think that should be sustained in some way, not just in our industry, across the high streets as well, because unless we can get high streets and small businesses back operating quickly, they won't be generating income, and that'll affect our industry as well. So we could come back early on June 1st, and that would be great. But if people aren't out there with money to buy cars or an uncertain future, then we will struggle.
What do you think is going to happen to used car prices, Chris?
I would like to think that common sense prevails, and that the fact that less than 10% of vehicles are being transacted at the moment to give CAP any sort of indication that they shouldn't change. If no one's buying and no one's selling, the price of a used car is the price of a used car. To take any sort of punitive hit at this point in time would be foolhardy. I think anybody that disposes of used cars for less money than they're worth will probably regret that in a few months' time and see that as a missed opportunity. The danger is that some businesses will need to start turning stock over for cash flow. That is the danger, because then that will impact on used car values. But I think, gut feeling, I think the used car market will be hard. A hard market, not difficult, but prices will harden up. And I think it's an opportunity for the industry to start putting some money back in.
What about new cars? Are you concerned about supply at all?
Initially, no. From what I can see from the information I'm getting from our manufacturers is there is supply in the UK. There certainly were boats on the way over, and there were boats currently. And if you look at some of the images online, there's lots of capacity over here, or lots of volume over here waiting to go to dealers. And certainly we're feeling a bit of a message from the manufacturers to say, right, you need to start taking some stock now, which is okay, which is not really a problem as long as there's an end in sight. But then we'll have this potential gap in the market of the supply chain. So all the component manufacturers coming back online will inevitably give us some sort of supply problem. The timing of that will be everything, won't it? So I don't know, but have we got enough to see us through September? And then the supply issue comes in Q4. I really don't know. But initially, no, I think initially, as long as it's the right stock, I think we've got stock around us.
How long will it take you to bounce back to where you were before this crisis started?
Good question. And again, pure speculation. I think it will be into next year. Certainly, I think, which is a real shame, because we had a plan set out in November of recovering from a very, very difficult first half fiscal year last year, and up until probably 2 weeks into March, we were on plan, and that would have been a great result for the company for the fiscal year compared to its prior year. But I think now it's about managing the cost, making sure that you don't have too many staff back in the business that doesn't meet the requirements of the business, which is why the extended furlough scheme is important. Reshaping the business in terms of the online inquiries, and then looking forward to next year, and hopefully the decisions on Brexit are made at the same time. Who knows where that's going to end up, but hopefully this will impact positively on Europe and how they look upon the UK as an industry when it comes to trade.
Let's hope so on that front. What about the single most important thing this crisis has taught you, Chris?
I don't know about single. It's taught me quite a few things, to be honest. It's certainly taught me about what we said earlier about the use of communication tools like we are now, like Zoom, which I've used extensively, and YouTube live with my staff every week. So we've got a better understanding of how we can use those tools. I temper that by keep reminding people that we currently aren't running a business at the minute. We are not running a full business. So Zoom and working from home is great, but actually we're a people company. We'll still be a people company at the end of the day, and we still need to transact a lot of what we do face to face. So not coming away from those core values, I think, is important. The issue of communication has been great, because I've had more time to think about communicating with staff, updating staff regularly, and the use of Zoom and YouTube has been phenomenal for that. So that's been great. But the opportunity to amass lots of information. So I said this, but nobody's trained for this. Nobody's got the preparation they need to deal with what we did when we shut down and what we're going to do when we reopen. So being able to take the time to amass lots of information from lots of different sources, not just our industry, but other industries, and use that to make my decisions moving forward, and discussing those with my teams has been invaluable, I think.
And a little bit of breaking news for you, Chris. I'm sorry, I was slightly distracted there, but I've been fed through some details that the furlough scheme looks like it's going to be extended by 4 months to October, which was a lot longer than any of us was expecting. I mean, what are your initial reaction to that?
Yeah, great. Does it give a percentage terms on it or not?
It doesn't. Just the breaking news that the government's going to help pay the wages of workers on leave because of coronavirus. It's been extended to October. That's just come from the BBC.
Good news. Yeah, good news. Good news for our industry, and to be honest, good news for every industry. That still hinges around when we can get retail back moving, doesn't it? That's the key.
I think that could lead some to think that maybe retail is going to take a little bit longer to get back than the initial plans. What do you think?
Yeah, probably right. You're probably right. I think that a little bit of caution in terms of they might be thinking that they might have to harden up on lockdown. The easing measures, if people go too far outside of those, will create a problem. It seems ironic that I could go to the beach in Cornwall, but I can't go to the beach in Wales if I want at the moment. And clearly we've got businesses in Wales that are operating on a slightly different timeline as well.
Just another update for you on that. It says from the trades unions that the government will still cover 80% of wages, has changed the rules to support short time working. Which is a key, they say, to a gradual, safe return to work. So hopefully that will mean some part-time work will be allowed by those furloughed workers as well.
Yeah, it's good news. I think the government support through this has been phenomenal. Actually, I hate to think the numbers that are being bandied around and what it's costing us, but necessary for businesses to secure them. Yeah, and let's hope that we won't need all of that for all the period, but I think, yeah, probably an indication they think retail will be slightly slower.
So Chris, I think we'll probably have to leave it there because it looks like I'm going to have to go away and write some stories now. So thank you very, very much indeed for your time. I found it absolutely fascinating hearing about your business, and wish you the best of luck when it comes to getting back to work, if it is on June the 1st or hopefully sometime very soon after that.
Okay, appreciate your time. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chris. So tomorrow on Car Dealer Live, I've got Mike Allen. He's the analyst from Zeus Capital that looks into the listed dealer groups. He's going to give us an idea of what that picture is for those guys. On Thursday, I'm talking to the MD from Sherwood's Motor Group. And on Friday, G-Force is back again to give us a guide on all things when it comes to online sales. If you want to get involved in Car Dealer Lives like this one, you can email me. It's james@blackpoolmedia.co.uk or find me on Twitter @CarDealerEd or on LinkedIn. Now, if you want breaking news sent direct to your phone, I've set up a Car Dealer Magazine WhatsApp group. On the second one now, they're both very popular. If you want to place on one of those, just send me a message via those methods I've already mentioned. I'll send you a link and you can get involved. There's a full schedule for Car Dealer Lives on the website, cardealermagazine.co.uk. Thanks once again to Chris for joining us. Really appreciate his time, and I'll be back again tomorrow. Goodbye.